Hey guys, and welcome back to the Workbench. This is where we discuss ceiling fan history, trivia, and technical information. Today we're going to do an update on A&G machinery. And I did not think I would have enough info to bring you an update on them so soon, but I'm very excited to. In fact, I wanted to film this video sooner, but I was waiting on a few things to come in the mail. So, let's get into it. Ackerman Gould was a machining company founded by Frank Ackerman and Herman Gould in 1959. A&G Machinery was a shell company they had incorporated but were not using. Robert Gould, Herman's son, wanted a decorative fan for his home that served only as a light. He bought an antique Westinghouse at an antique store and made one as a hobby. On a whim, he took his prototype to Fortunoff's department store. The lighting buyer said, "Could you leave it here?" Robert said, "I can't. This is my only one. And I was thinking about having it photographed and, getting some pictures of it and try to market it." The department store buyer said, "Can you leave it here until it's time to be photographed?" Robert left it for a few hours, and when he came back, the store had already sold a dozen of them. Robert said, "I don't even know how to make these yet." The department store buyer said, "You better figure it out fast." So that was how A&G Machinery started selling decorative-only ceiling fans in 1972. He started out selling to lighting stores and distributors only, as well as the local retailers like we talked about, Fortunoff's department store. He avoided the discount stores and the mass retailers. A&G Machinery was the inventor of schoolhouse globes for ceiling fans as far as the vintage and modern era. We know that companies like Hunter had really, really big ones on fans like Hotel Originals, but if you think about it, back in the 70s, Casablanca had the 5-light, which was several years later. When Hunter started using light kits, they were a round globe. When Emerson started using light kits, they were a round globe. A&G was the first company to reintroduce schoolhouse globes for ceiling fans, and that's because Bob Gould found the mold to an original antique schoolhouse globe at an antique shop in West Virginia, and decided to use that design in his prototype. A&G was also the first fan company to name fans. Casablanca was very famous for naming them after trains. Hunter later called theirs the original and started giving other ones names. But the first company to actually give fans names instead of model numbers was A&G Machinery. And their models, instead, like how Burton named them after trains, Bob Gould named them after cars, which is why we have the Bentley and several others that are named after cars. In 1973, they decided to start making real fans that moved air. Bob Gould contacted several U.S. motor manufacturers, Emerson, Westinghouse, GE, whoever was making motors at that time. No one would sell to him in small quantities. He only wanted 50 motors at a time. Tried everywhere in the U.S., no one would sell them in a small quantity, so he went to Hong Kong. SMC, Wing Tat, threw them out of their factories. They're like, "We don't sell in those small quantities." The only factory in Hong Kong that took him seriously was a very small factory that only employed 25 people and was called Chow Electric Company. Chow made cast iron fans. They were machined on a lathe and iron dust would go everywhere. They would use unsealed bearings and the cast iron dust would get in the bearings. Robert asked for sealed bearings. The fans wobbled because they weren't balanced. Now, if you think about this, a wood-bladed fan has to be balanced. But did you know that a spinner motor has to be balanced too? If it's heavier on one side of the casting than on the other, the fan will wobble just based on the weight of the motor, as well as if it's, if the blades aren't level. So they asked for the motors to be balanced. Chow Electric Company, small factory, didn't know how. I'm going to start over.